Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're going to get started with the presentation. Today's webinar on Security Center 5.9, our latest release of our unified security platform. I'll be your host today. My name is Jean-Pierre Picard. I'm manager for product marketing at Genetec. Today's presentation will last between 35 and 45 minutes. And at the end, we will host a Q&A to answer any questions you may have. Before we get started, I wanted to reiterate the Security Center 5.9 was launched in January and is available today on the GTAP. If you would like to upgrade your system, you can upgrade to Security Center 5.9 through the services of your certified Genetec channel partner. We are recording this presentation and we will publish it on the Genetec website's resource hub somewhere next week. You can ask questions using the right-hand side question bar, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. We'll do our best to take them as questions comes in as well. Today's presentation will cover two releases, and the first one is 5.9.0. So 5.9.0 is currently the latest release available for Security Center, and it is a major release. It was launched in January 2020 and is free for any customers with an active Genetec Advantage contract. But we're also going to be talking about upcoming features available in 5.9.1, which is an upcoming release, which is a minor release as shown by its increment on the third number. Now, minor releases are free for all users on a current major version, so if you're already on 5.9.0, you'll be able to upgrade to 5.9.1 free of charge. Otherwise, if you're on a previous version, you will need an active Genetec Advantage contract to upgrade to 5.9.1, as it will represent an upgrade from a major version. Security Center 5.9 is organized around three core innovation thematics, and we will look at the features that support these thematics throughout the presentation today. The first thematics is the empowerment of system administrator. We are going to explore how 5.9 makes it easier to manage a system and keep it up to date. After that, we will talk about our second pillar, which is the expansion of video surveillance, scale, and security, two topics that are timely and have evolved over the last year. Finally, we'll talk about the unification between security and operation and how our recent releases make this unification ever stronger. Let's start with our first thematic, the empowerment of system administrator. Now, system management can sometimes be seen as a somewhat dry topic, but the reality of it is that system management can unlock tremendous value to an organization. That is because it helps tackle challenges that are very modern and timely. One of those challenges is the burden of compliance. Compliance is a topic that keeps taking more space in security system decisions. The burden of managing checklists, regulations, and audits is growing, and the overhead that comes with it is expanding as well. Very often, this results in the organizations being unable to evolve the system at the rate that they would wish. The second challenge related to system management is the fact that IT resources are more and more focused on systems that support the core mission of the company, which is generating value. And that means that for support departments such as security, which often finds itself in a supporting role, resources from the IT department are harder to obtain. Again, making it hard to evolve systems and keep them up to date and secure. And even when these two challenges are resolved, the growing variety of sensors that are connected in unified systems increases not only the breadth of the surface of attack on the edge, but also the complexity of maintaining its security. That's why in Security Center 5.9, we've introduced the new long-term support track. The long-term support track is a separate set of releases within major versions that focus on minimizing the impact of updates on the system in production while maintaining access to critical cybersecurity updates. This really targets organizations who cannot maintain systems at the regular pace that Genetec brings out its release, which is a minor release every few months following major release, and major releases coming once a year or more. Now, for some organization, whether it is for a lack of IT resources or challenges in updating internal processes, this space cannot be met. But when new vulnerabilities are discovered, upgrading a significant upgrade can take too much time. The LTS track will make it easier to close those gaps and keep the system secure. Now, the LTS track does not get access to new devices or feature between major releases, and so there's a sacrifice to be had for this increased predictability. What this means in practice is that if you look at different types of releases in the regular release track called the continuous delivery release track, you would have architecture versions, major versions such as 5.9, then minor versions such as 5.9.1. There is also a fourth type of releases called a patch version. Patch versions come in when a major release no longer is in general availability, when a newer version is available. Now, at that point, we continue maintaining that release with patches, which include support for new devices, new SDK capabilities, bug fixes, and security fixes. On the LTS track, the scope of each version is reduced. No minor version is available, and patch versions are narrowed down to only include select bug fixes, those that have a minimal risk of destabilizing the system, and critical security fixes. If you look at the type of updates that you'll get over time with each track, let's take a major release such as 5.9. When 5.9 was launched, the continuous delivery track, which is the primary track, entered general availability. During the general availability phase, which lasts until the next major release, the continuous delivery track receives minor releases, which includes features, devices, in addition to the SDK bug fixes and security fixes you would see in a patch. The long-term support track, for its part, also is in general availability. It is possible to create new systems with this version, but it only receives a LTS patch, which contains only bug fixes and security fixes. Now, once the next major version comes out, say 5.10, both tracks will enter restricted availability phase. At that phase, it is no longer to spin up new systems with that version. You have to go to the latest major release. And both will continue receiving updates in the form of regular patches for the continuous delivery track and LTS patches for the LTS track. The difference here is that the continuous delivery track will receive access to all bug fixes and all security fixes, as well as support for new devices and SDK capabilities, whereas LTS patch will only receive critical security fixes and select bug fixes. Now, after 3 years, the continuous delivery track reaches end of life. At this point, no further updates will be available for it. The LTS track, for its part, reaches what we call the end of maintenance stage, at which point critical security fixes will still be issued on a per-need basis until end of life is reached 5 years after initial launch. The LTS track aims at making it easier to maintain the software that powers your security system, making it easier to maintain it, to keep it secure against new vulnerabilities that are discovered in the field. But this does not help close down gaps on the edge of the system. To quantify the risks those gaps create, we've polled our customers through the Genetec Performance Improvement Program. And what we looked at was how many cameras out there in the field use the latest firmware version. What we found out is that only 30% of cameras use the latest firmware version. Now, a lot of new firmwares are focused on bug fixes and performance improvements, which might not be critical to apply to a system. But a follow-up number to this, when we looked into that, is we found that 1 in 4 systems had at least one camera that had a firmware that had a known vulnerability, which is a very high risk. To help maintain cameras up to date, we've launched a firmware vault. The firmware vault is a service powered by the Genetec Update service that was introduced in version 5.8.1 last year. What it does is it allows you to track the availability of new compatible firmware for the cameras on your system and download it and push it to cameras as well. Now, when it was launched, the firmware vault offered firmware from Hanwha. With this release, we are expanding the firmware vault ecosystem to 4 manufacturers. And for all of these, you will now be able to download the firmware and distribute it to your connected camera directly from the config tool. No need to use an external tool, no need to set up another secured link to download the firmware. Security Center will validate compatibility before suggesting its update to you and will let you know whether it is a critical update or a recommended update. Critical update means that there is a fix for a known vulnerability, whereas recommended means that it contains a mix of bug fixes, performance enhancements, and such. Now, what this means is, as of today, the supported ecosystem for the firmware vault includes Axis, Bosch, and Panasonic, in addition to Hanwha, who has been providing their firmware since last year. So for these 4 manufacturers, if you are using them in your system, you can now set up the firmware vault, receive notifications of new firmware, and push it to your cameras directly in the config tool. On the access control side, we've also unlocked the ability to track the firmware version of access control controllers and interfaces. This is shown in the hardware inventory report, but you cannot download and push it yet. This is something that we'll look at in the future. Controller and interface health monitoring has also been improved to track whether a unit is offline or online and the timestamp at which this happened. This allows you to keep an eye out for any hardware failure or network issues that could be causing this. On the access control front, we've also introduced new door events that track whether a door is secure or is unsecured. In previous releases, you could track the status of the lock, whether the lock had re-engaged or not. But this did not track whether the door had been closed and was properly secured. Now you can track both events separately in the monitoring interface, in events to action, in reports. Another common challenges with edge devices is setting up strong credentials to manage access to the devices. Now, most organizations and all integrators have in their new camera enrollment checklist changing the default credentials. But with systems expanding rapidly, with cameras requiring replacements, it is very easy for some of those points on the checklist to be forgotten. So through the same research, what we found out is that nearly 1 in 4 systems have at least one camera using default credentials. And this is not because installers are not aware of the issue. It is simply too easy to forget to change it. That's why in 5.9.1, we're introducing a new camera password manager tool. The camera password manager is powered by a new unified role. And what it does is it allows you to change passwords to comply with the unique rules of each camera manufacturer. As you can see in the video here, passwords rules are often complex, and complying with them requires a lot of characters that are specific to the rules of the manufacturer. The password manager automatically sets up strong randomized password based on which camera and brand it is. You can do this for single cameras. You can do it for batches of cameras, but also set up a schedule at which point all camera passwords will be randomly updated. And you can also trigger password updates using a hot action. This is interesting, for example, when you have a system administrator that leaves the organization. You could use a hot action to trigger an automatic update of all camera passwords. When changing password using the hardware inventory report, you can select one or more unit and click on Update Password to generate that strong randomized password. As you can see, this is a simple process that takes a few seconds, and as we will refresh the report, we go from a very weak password to a very strong password. You can also export password to a protected Excel file directly from the hardware inventory report. Those two features, the firmware vault and the camera password manager, makes it easier to close security gaps on the edge of your system. One of the remaining potential weak points of your system is privileges. Very often privileges accrue a certain entropy over time as people are granted temporary access that is never removed. We've introduced last year the Privilege Troubleshooter, which is a tool that allows you to look at the access rights of specific users or related to specific entities and even actions. A common request is the ability to export those reports, which is being added in Security Center 5.9.1. You can now export to Excel or PDF to keep track of privileges as they were at a certain point in time, so you can compare it in the future. One last enhancement of interest for system administrators is the introduction of certification for Genetec Mobile with two popular device management platforms. Those two mobile device management platforms are Workspace ONE, which was formerly known as AirWatch. This is a VMware product. And the second product is Microsoft Intune. The certification is valid for both the Genetec Mobile iOS application and Android application. What this certification validated is the ability to assign Genetec Mobile to enroll devices managed by the organization directly from those two platforms. You can also manage update rules, such as setting up an automatic update during a certain time of the day, off shift, for example. And more interestingly, you can push settings to each application, such as the directory name or the directory IP address, the language that will be used, username, and other personalization settings that you can set up. This way, your operators are not forced to configure it themselves the first time they use it. Moving on to our second innovation pillar in Security Center 5.9, the expansion of video surveillance scale and security. Now, video surveillance scale has been a topic that's been current going as far as the transition to IP video. But today's challenges related to scale are very different from the one of the past. In the past, the main difficulties was in ensuring that the system could scale from an infrastructure perspective, manage more cameras and higher resolution. This problem has largely been resolved, even with the increasing resolution of cameras. But today, because there are so many cameras out there, managing them and combining them, both security and privacy together, is a challenge that is much more complex than it used to be. If you can see everywhere, how do you ensure privacy? How do you ensure that operators do not use video for purposes that were not intended? Operators in charge of monitoring often struggle with the flood of data and events that they have to manage every day. And even with the advent of video analytics, keeping an eye out on everything happening on your premises can be very challenging. And the last challenge is a classic one. Even as organizations are expecting more cameras and more devices to be installed, budgets are not growing at the same pace. And what that means is that the infrastructure is pressured to be more efficient, to do more with that investment. To help tackle those challenges, we've introduced the new digital signature in Security Center 5.9. Digital signature replaces the former watermarking feature. A digital signature signs your videos so that you can validate that they have not been tampered with. Whereas the previous version of this used an RSA algorithm, the new one uses a elliptic curve signature algorithm. This is not only a more secure algorithm, but it is also more efficient for the strength it provides. You can activate it on your cameras in the config tool, but it is also activated by default on all new StreamVault images. So if you are purchasing StreamVault machines, this will be activated by default and will be taken into consideration when calculating how many streams your unit will be able to handle. Now, if you are using this feature and upgrading an existing system, please keep in mind that you will have to account for a 6% increase in the CPU that will be used by the archiver for every 3,000 frames per second processed. So what that means is, as an example, let's say we had 300 cameras each at 30 frames per second, so 3 times this guideline here, 9,000 frames per second total. On our reference unit, we would previously use 22% of our CPU for the archiver. After the upgrade and activation of digital signature, we would now use 26%. Because this is calculated on the archiver's total percentage used and not as a flat 6% of the total CPU capacity, it is important to perform the calculation properly. If you need assistance, reach out to your Genetec sales engineer. Now, Digital signature takes the place that watermarking typically was fulfilling in versions past. The watermarking feature has been changed to align with common terminology and is now used as a feature that provides burn-in watermarks in video streams. What it does, it allows you to identify which user is viewing a stream on which workstation and which camera is being viewed directly within the video feed. This is not an overlay. This is not an additional layer. This is burned in the video, so it cannot be removed. And the main objective here is to make sure that operators don't share video either exported or captured through a mobile device in an unauthorized way. We've all seen funny videos of patrons in a mall falling in a fountain because they're looking at their phone. Even if as an individual this might seem funny, as an organization, this is a breach of trust that patrons put in us. With watermarking, exporting the video without having the user's information present would be impossible. You can activate it at the user level, and this can be done on individual users and user groups. So you could set it so that your regular operators will always have watermarks in both live and recorded video, whereas your investigators could be able to view video without watermarks. You can set the watermark on the edges of the image or as a mosaic, which will repeat across the screen. Now, keep in mind that because this is burned in, some transcoding is required when exporting video. And what that does is it increases the time it takes to export video. This time is significantly reduced if you are using hardware acceleration, which comes in the high performance specification for Secure Center workstations. If you are not using hardware acceleration, then the impact will be more significant. For organization requiring even more control, we're also introducing in 5.9.1 a new video export feature that complies with the 4i principle. What it does is it adds an extra layer of authorization required when a user exports video. So for example, let's say the operator A wants to export a video and he does not have full export permissions. He will be required to ask another operator to also enter his user credentials. This operator could be on the same level and in the same group as he is, but it would require two persons to work together to export a video, ensuring that video is not misused. Once the video is exported, the system will proceed as normal. To help increase the efficiency of your infrastructure, 5.9.1 also introduced GPU acceleration support for transcoding through the media gateway. When using Genetec Mobile or the web client, video has to be transcoded through the media gateway, which puts a significant strain on the system as more users are present as they consume more video. With GPU-accelerated transcoding, you can increase the number of streams your media gateway can handle by 50%. This is especially relevant today as remote monitoring is a very important topic that several organizations are moving to. In order to make more with your infrastructure, we've also increased the efficiency of the people counter unified analytic. People counter was introduced last year and uses a machine learning based algorithm that provides very high performance and accuracy, but it also requires a significant amount of processing resources. With 5.9, we've reduced those resources by 30%, which means you can use the same hardware to do 30% more streams. You can also see on the screen some of the specialized widgets available for people counter to display the occupancy and the flow of entries and exits in an area in an easy to consume interface. In 5.9.1, we're also introducing new widgets for Camera Integrity Monitor, which is another unified analytic that was introduced last year. Camera Integrity Monitor keeps an eye out on your cameras to detect changes in the quality of the image capture. This is done using a reference image and will detect things such as the camera being covered or tampered with, or a camera simply needing maintenance. Now, reviewing events is something that can be challenging in a monitoring interface, and that's why we're introducing these new widgets, which allow you to review individual cameras from the reference screenshot to the event that triggered the alert and the current image. This allows you to reset the monitor for individual cameras rapidly, or to do it for a group. You can also visualize how many cameras are displaying temporary alerts in your system. Camera Integrity Monitor is an interesting analytic that takes very little processing power as it runs on a schedule. So you can set each camera to be reviewed once a week, once a day, depending on your needs. That brings us to our third pillar, the strengthening of the unification between security and operation. Security Center is built around unification. Its main purpose is to bring together multiple core systems and modules in one comprehensive interface that allows you to react to event with a faster response. Two of the key modules to unlock that unification is the Sepelia Unified Communications module and the Intrusion Management module. Both of these are seeing significant update this year. Sepelia has been expanded with the ability to set up public addressing communications directly in Security Center, whereas the intrusion module has been updated to allow you to assign individual units to intrusion sensors and keep track on all events and alerts from intrusion panels no matter where you are in the system. So Sepelia 2.9, which was launched alongside Security Center 5.9 in January, allows you to set up custom paging groups. Custom paging groups can contain any number of SIP devices supported by Sepelia. Once a paging group is created, you can activate it using the normal contact book found in the security desk. When activated, each device in the group will be called and will receive a message that is broadcasted simultaneously. This works with both live and recorded messages. Configuration is extremely simple. In the Sepelia configuration interface, you can simply set up new paging groups, as you can see here on the left, and you can add your devices to your paging group. These devices can be a mix of intercoms, speakers, extensions, but it can also include other paging groups. This means that you could set up a paging group for a zone within a floor and a paging group for the floor itself and choose which one you want to activate in your interface. Now you can also configure a delay, a countdown timer for each device to answer before message plays. The operator can always disregard this countdown timer and issue the communication immediately, but the countdown timer gives time for devices or operators that are part of your paging groups to pick up and connect to receive the broadcast. At the bottom of the interface, you can add audio messages to your library in MP3 or WAV file. The operator interface is extremely simple to use. If your operators are familiar with Sepelia, they will feel right at home with the public addressing capabilities. Simply go to the contact book, locate a paging group, and call it. Now, before the call starts, the operator gets to choose if he's going to use his microphone or use a pre-recorded audio clip. Once the broadcast is triggered, the countdown starts. At the top left, you can see which devices or members have connected. You can always check the list of devices and see who has connected to the call by clicking on the bottom left. When the message has finished playing, the call is automatically ended. The other improvement in Security Center 5.9 with regards to a unified module is for the intrusion management module. We've introduced a new overview, intrusion detection overview panel that can be pinned to your interface no matter which task you are using. This panel shows alerts from your intrusion system and shows all entities that are falling into a non-normal state. This could be an alarm, but also power failures, bypass, or units reporting trouble. What's more, you can also assign a camera to individual sensors in your intrusion system. In previous version, cameras were assigned to intrusion zones. When an intrusion zone was pushed into an alarm state, the camera assigned to the zone would be pulled up. But as zone can be quite large, then the cameras might not be looking at the location of the intrusion event. By assigning cameras to individual sensor, you can see the most relevant camera right away, reducing time to response. Now, before we move on to the Q&A, I'm seeing questions coming in. I'd just like to go over a few other notable enhancements to Secure Center 5.9. I mentioned earlier that we've been introducing specialized widgets for the dashboard task in the last year. In 5.9, we've also introduced new widgets for alarm monitoring. The first one displays a live count of alarms, as you can see on the screen here. Now, this differs from the existing the multi-purpose count widget because it is a live count. The count widget that is used for reports is refreshed on a schedule, say every minute or every hour, depending on which type of information you're looking at. The alarm count widget allows you to see how many alarms are active and under investigation or requiring acknowledgement. You can personalize it as you want. What's interesting is you can change the color based on certain threshold, say turning to orange if more than 5 alarms are active and to red if more than 7 are active. The second widget allows you to view the list of events and alarms that are currently active. From there, you can see who is taking care of the alarm and also acknowledge them if they represent nuisance alarms. 5.9 also lets you order the alarm queue with the newest alarm showing on top, whereas the default value has always been to show the oldest alarm on top. Some organizations with a lot of alarms might want to be able to see what's new first before going back to existing alarm. Now it is possible. And finally, the active alarm count is now clustered on map so that it does not prevent seeing other information. So you can see right here a little icon that says we have 4 active alarm in the building that is here. And you can see at the top level of the map how many alarms are active in that map itself as well. Another interesting feature available in Secure Center 5.9 is integration with the HID Origo platform. This will be available in version 5.9.1, which is coming out soon. And what it does is it allows you to assign HID mobile credentials in Secure Center. HID Origo is interesting because it uses a subscription-based model which allows you to scale up and down easily, and it uses a dynamic pool of licenses that can be reused when a license is no longer used by a mobile device. So we are nearing the end of today's webinar. I'd just like to recap some of the features we looked at and which release they are mapping to. So the long-term support track, the expanded ecosystem of the firmware vault, and tracking of the firmware for access control controllers and interfaces are all available in 5.9.0, which is already available for download. Mobile certification is also available with this version, as are digital signature and watermarking. The enhanced intrusion UX is also part of 5.9, as are alarm widgets. Now, Sepelia 2.9 was launched alongside 5.9.0. It is a separate module that must be purchased and added to the platform, but it is compatible with 5.9.0. 5.9.1 will be available soon, and it will include the new camera password manager feature, the 4i video export settings, as well as hardware acceleration for media gateway. It'll also introduce the ability to export privileged troubleshooter reports and manage the alerts from camera integrity monitor using dashboard widgets, as well as use HID Origo credentials. If you wish to upgrade to 5.9.0 or 5.9.1 from earlier version, you need to have an active Genetec Advantage contract. If you're already on 5.9.0, 5.9.1 will be available free of charge regardless of the status of your contract. Before I open up the questions, I'd like to invite you all to sign up to attend our upcoming virtual conference, Connect DX. Connect DX will be held from April 20 to 22nd and will feature a keynote by Genetec CEO Pierre Raz, as well as 2 full days of live sessions. We'll have 15 partner booths and over 50 Genetec representatives there to answer your questions live. We'll have over 30 on-demand sessions and 12 live sessions in different regions of the world. This is your chance to get access to the latest and greatest from Genetec, engage with Genetec partners and Genetec representative, as well as hear from customers who have tackled new challenges using Genetec platforms. You can sign up today at genetec.com/connectdx. So I'm now going to open the floor to questions. I'm going to invite you to use the questions panel on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar interface. We will take all questions that are of public interest verbally, but we'll also take questions that are more private and answer them by text.